Keith Livingston here again with Rod Dixon, part 2. And we're going to talk a bit more about Rod's training and approach to training and his philosophy of training for distances as disparate as 800 metres, covered in 1:47.6 in Rome in 1973, after the Olympic year of 72, right out to 2 hours 8 and 59 for the New York Marathon. Huge range, world ranked at every distance on the track between 1,500 and 5,000 metres, out to the road distances, number one in the world.
Well, actually, I got number one ranking 80, 81, 82. And then 83, I didn't race as many because I was focused on the marathon. So I think I went down to about number 3 or 4, I think, for the road season. I didn't get beaten, but I just didn't run enough.
I didn't run enough to get ranking points.
Yeah. When I was running even 1,500 meters mile, I had still running as a club runner and therefore running cross country. And of course, 71, I went to the World Cross Country. And 73, I went to the World Cross Country. 73, I won the English cross country and also to the British 1,500 meter in the same year. And that's never been done before. But I think what it was, Keith, is that my grounding was in strength training, and that is, I ran distance. I don't think I ever really got to being consistent over 100 miles a week, but certainly somewhere between 85 and 95 was my weekly average as a builder. And a lot of that was at aerobic pace. So long and steady, just going out and running. But I loved the cross country because I felt that gave me more of an interest in running on the roads. And of course, we had the Mai Tai Valley. We had all the surrounding hills of Nelson, the Wairau Valley, the Marahau Valley. So I did a lot of my running in the hills, in the trails, a lot of farmland running, a lot of cross country. So I had a balance of cross country, and a lot of the cross country running did require balance and coordination and agility. So there we are, the ABC: agility, balance, and coordination. So I think as I started to run more and more in Europe, my brother John, who was a very big believer in the Lydiard principles and philosophy of training, and of course John's coach was George McKenzie, who was the brother of Dave McKenzie, 1967 Boston Marathon champion. So there was a good grounding and understanding of aerobic training and the pyramid of training, so that you built a foundation and then you moved into your hill training, your pace, time trial type running, and then you sharpened with speed track training, and then you used your races, track races, to prepare yourself towards one. So the first 2 or 3 track races were shaking off the conditioning and getting sharper, and as the training went, you had more intensity and less volume towards those 2 or 3 races that you wanted to be your regional championships, your centre championships, and your national championships. So I think we always focused on about 5 elite races to culminate in the season. But once we went to Europe, realised that wasn't going to be the case. You had to go early. We'd go over there in May and set up in a training camp, and there again settling into the Northern Hemisphere wonderfully. We were settling into another summer. We've just left summer, so we're coming into another summer. And therefore, we ran much the same as we did in New Zealand, aerobic runs, slow and steady, but then you use the races to bring up a certain peak. But you didn't want to have a fine peak because there were another 6 or 7 races in that month you were going to participate in. So your track training or your track workout was just sharp time trials. I think I did a few things like 2 mile, sprint the straights, jog the bends, 300s, 600s, maybe 1,000 meters, 2 or 3 of those. And as we came towards racing, you would really just do 2 or 3 300s. And I used to do a lot of plyometrics, speed drills, leg drills, not really a lot of racing or heavy training. It was just flexibility, balance, coordination, because the races were bringing you sharp.
When you were, say, aiming for like this 800 meters where you did your personal best, did you change the blend of your training very much from your 1500 work, or was the strength for your 1500 meter work enough to get you that time?
Interesting, Keith, because yes, I got my speed from strength. I ran a lot of races where guys got their strength from speed, and but mine was, I couldn't go out there and run fast 200s. I had difficulty doing a lot of track training where you're using the turns. I would tend to go into the center of the field, on the football field, and run diagonals and do 5 or 6 minutes of sprint the angle, and then jog the baseline, and then sprint the angle and jog the baseline. So a lot of the training was really geared for varying races from 800 meters through to 5,000 meters, really. I didn't run too many 5,000 meters until 1975. So 71 through 75 was pretty well 2 mile, 3,000 meters was, but you know, you're running 3 or 4, 1,500 meters sometimes in a week.
Yeah. And because you go back so far in the, I'm not being rude here, Rod, but you do. You go back a long way in New Zealand running history. What was your initial impression of, say, seeing Dick Quax for the first time? Or
we heard about him. I didn't race him until 72, 73. So really the big impact for us was of 1970 at the Commonwealth Games in Edinburgh. Of course, that was on television. You know,
he wasn't going to be deterred.
Yeah. No, that was kind of Quax. You're not going to be second fiddle to anybody. He was going to.
So now, the first time you met or raced on Walker, he must have made waves.
Yeah, well, I first saw John at the Tauranga meeting at out Mount Maunganui. Actually, it was a track meet there, and he ran the 800 meters, and he came from about, I don't know, 10, 15 meters down and won the thing. And we all looked and go, who is this kid? He's from Manuira, you know, the big M. And then he started, you know, showing up at national track meets, and him and Bruce Hunter, actually, the 800 meter runner, former All Black. Yeah. They had some pretty big races. And I remember in 72, or it might have been late 71, when they had the Olympic trials, and Bruce won the Olympic trials, and John was second. And so therefore John, or nobody was selected for the 800 meters to go to Munich. But that was the beginning. I met him a couple of times at those meets, and he came out with us for a couple of runs at Wanganui, and I was pretty impressed with him because he just had that, he had that Snell look about him. He was, I think he wanted to be Peter Snell. And so he really was. He was a very talented kid, and then by late 72, early 73, he was starting to show incredible promise in the New Zealand track season, and so he made the Pacific Conference Games team in 1973 and travelled with us, and bit of a character, but we figured out, this is a lot of talent, and that's when we had invited him to come to Europe with us, and that was the beginning of John. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He responded very, very well to the travel and the training and the racing, and you could see that he had incredible strength, but natural speed. So those combined, and a certain arrogance, and that helped him tremendously in his running, not to be bullied or pushed around by others. Yeah. John was there to show them a lesson or two.
Yeah, there's an apocryphal tale. I'm pretty sure it's got a basis in fact. At the Tauranga Twilight in Mount Maunganui there, after a meeting there, there was a gathering of athletes, including the javelin thrower, the big fella, Mike O'Rourke.
Mike O'Rourke, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some gang type guys saw Walker at some venue there. This is very loose, and decided that they'd have a go, as you do, because, I mean, he's a tall poppy, right? So apparently, from what was described to me anyway, was that Walker wasn't backing off, and neither were these gang guys. So what eventuated, he didn't have to do anything because Mike O'Rourke waded in there and just across the few of them. It might be an urban legend, but I tend to think that might have happened.
Yeah,
it could be true. So I'll ascribe it to could be true. But anyway, yeah, he had that sort of aura about him, didn't he? That he, like, was it you who described walking with him through some streets towards a stadium where there was a meet on, and he heard all this cheering in the distance, and he sort of swelled up and got bigger as he got nearer the and he thought it was all for him.
Yeah. Well, actually, it started in the room, and we were going to head down to, it was Oslo, and Bislett Stadium in Oslo. And I said, "Come on, John, we get going now." I said, "You're on before me, so and I want to get going anyway." So we got organised, and I looked at John and I said, "I'm not walking down with you. You've got your shirt inside out and back to front." I said, "Come on, John, you got to look better than that." He said, "Oh, it's not that important." He said, "I'll put my tracksuit on over the top." I said, "No, you've got to look right." Well, so
he was your wife, was he? Oh, you were his wife. Okay.
It's a nana.
Yeah.
And so as we were walking down to the stadium, and he said, "You're a bit fussy with this, how I should look." And I said, "No, John, you've got to look like a champion even in the streets before we get to the stadium." I said, it's all part of the journey. And of course, as we got close to the stadium, they were having the preliminaries of the high jump and the pole vault and that, and of course the roar of the crowd reverberated right around the city. And John kind of looked up and he'd go, "Wow, is that the stadium?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Wow, that's amazing. It's quite powerful, isn't it? Okay, yeah, it is John. And as we we started walking closer, and the roar of the crowd started, and John started sitting, shoulders up and back, and started walking just like I suggested, walking like a champion into the stadium. We walked down to the athletes area, and we walked out into the stadium. 28,000 people in the crowd were excited, and John looked all around and had put his hair back on one side and the other, and he said, "It takes me to draw the crowds." And then he went out and he won the race and was just off the world record. So, but that was John. He loved the moment. He loved the whole energy, and he responded to that. If you took him to an empty stadium, he could run well, but he wasn't on show. Take him to a stadium with 30,000 people, he would put on a show.
Yeah. This is really something quite profound, I think. Some athletes or some people respond to the crowd. They put on a show. It is show business, isn't it? And yes. They put on a really good show. And the more people are in the crowd, the more they put their own energy and feed off the crowd, and the crowd feeds them, and they want to see a show. But not every athlete realises that the crowd is actually there cheering them on. They think, "Oh, this is too much pressure for me. I've got to back off. I can't do any more because it's too much pressure." I don't know. That's how it seems to me. Some people.
No, you're right, Keith. I've been with athletes who, in training, are incredible. And I just thought, right, you've got to deliver what you've done tonight in the stadium now. You've got everything going towards an incredible performance. So believe in yourself. We'd go to the track meet, and he'd finish 5th or 6th. Some runners just weren't able to deliver on race day. Whereas John, he knew he didn't have to deliver in training, but he delivered in the arena. And that was John's nature. That was just who he was. And that's why he's a very special boy, just a very special athlete, and an incredibly powerful athlete. There's no doubt about that. And I witnessed that year in and year out, just traveling and being with him. He rose to the occasion every time. Not today's race is not important. Every race was important to John, and he delivered every time.
So he would have been a promoter's dream.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because of his ability just to dig deep and just put it on the line,
Yeah.
So now, moving forward a bit, we all know about, or most of us know about, the Montreal, which was sweet and sour for you, because I think the year before you were world number 1 over 5,000 and pretty well undefeated in Europe. Yeah. And then in the Olympic year, of course, Quax got himself back into superb shape. And it was very interesting because that was my first year of actual being a runner. It was 76. So it was an interesting, because I got right into it following it all. So we all anticipated a ding-dong battle for the gold medal between you and Viren and Dick Quax. It was like a 3-way tie. No one could really anticipate who was going to come out of that on top. But, everyone thought that you might carry it off because you had a much quicker 1,500 metre time than Viren, who I think his 1,500 best time was done as a junior.
Yes, well,
344 point something. But he could do that at the end of a 5,000 or a 10,000.
Yeah.
So what his real capability ability was over 1500. Had he trained for it? We really don't know. But anyway, can you walk us through what was going on in that final as you came around the bend? Because you moved up and it looked like maybe a little bit too soon. About the three.
No, my plan, well, our plan, that is John, my brother, and I had discussed that you had to be in control at 300 meters to go, because Varen tended to be wanting that role. He says, so you have to move or take over his position. You have to assert yourself and control the race from 300 meters to go. Well, we got to 300, and I felt confident that I had the pace to leave it till 220, maybe 200, maybe coming off the bend. I had that sort of attitude that no one was going to beat me. We've got a lap to go, and no one's doing anything at this point. And down the back straight, Varen had control, and I was just comfortably sitting in third, and this was going to be where I'm going to be. And then all of a sudden, things started moving, and Quax came through, Hildebrand came through, and I leapt out into lane 3 and tried to run them all down around the turn and come up the home straight. And really, when you're running at that pace at full effort at the end of a race, I think, and I might say here that I think the heat where Brendan Foster and I broke the existing or previous Olympic record, we ran nearly 40 seconds faster than Quax and Varen in our heat. And I believe that did have a slight effect on me. But nevertheless, so we came off the bend, and as we came up the home straight, Quax was in a good position, and I actually thought Quaxie was going to run him down. And then we just seemed to lock, and nobody was doing anything. Mm-hmm. And we just came towards, and I said, I know, there's nothing more I can do. I'm not accelerating like I normally do. I'm just hanging on. And right as we got to the line, I could see on my peripheral, Hildebrand dove to the line. And of course, we all went across. Now, we all went across within a second. So the 4 of us went across the line and within a second. But I knew that Varen had won, and I knew that Quax had got second, but I wasn't quite sure about whether Hildebrand had got across the line before I got across the line. And so we had to wait until the photo, and then, of course, it was Hildebrand who was given the nod. There was some discussion that you had to cross the finish line a metre above the track, but nothing was ever contested on that.
Well, I always thought it was breasting the tape.
Well, that's what it is, but he was definitely under a metre going across the line, and in fact, my whole body crossed the line before his feet crossed the line. So that was devastating, absolutely devastating.
Bittersweet, I'd say. But anyway, that was a real disappointment for you, and I think the whole of New Zealand was sort of feeling for you. But you eventually redeemed yourself in your own mind and just for yourself, I think. Correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but you went to the States and you lived there for a few years and you raced there and you were very successful, and then you decided to take on the marathon. So can you walk us through what brought you to the point where you thought you could maybe take that challenge on and do well and excel?
Well, of course, I went to the United States based on the boycott of the 1980 Olympics, where New Zealand joined the boycott. And I thought that was wrong. I think it was um, the Prime Minister at the time, Muldoon, easily influenced by the Americans to join the boycott, and Athletics New Zealand didn't really have much concern for the athletes, that they were being told by the government, if you want funding, I'm sure, if you want funding, then you join the boycott. And so they really, I mean, we learned about our boycott through the media. Athletics New Zealand and the team management had no idea what was going on. So, but I was disappointed, angry, because I trained well, and in '79 I'd done the races that I needed and believed for a 5,000, 10,000 meter Moscow attempt. And so at the time I was we were in Pennsylvania at Villanova University track meet when we heard about it. And the others went on to Europe. The other New Zealanders went on to Europe, but I stayed and said, no, I'm not going to go to Europe. I'm going to stay here and figure out what I want to do. But I know that the boycott, I'm devastated and I'm angry. So, but there was a 10K road race in Philadelphia that weekend, and I went down there and ran that and finished third. And I was pretty overwhelmed by the whole energy of it. And I thought to myself, I might run another couple of these. I think these are kind of cool. I like these road races. Hadn't done much road racing in my career, but this is certainly. And then the next couple of races, I clicked in, and before long, I was winning some of the majors. And then by the end of 80, actually John Walker and his wife Helen and Elizabeth, they came back to Pennsylvania and had a few days with us all and talked about next steps. And I said, John, I think I'm going to stay in the United States and run these road races, and I'm going to have another season next year. So I said, I don't see myself going back to the track. And so that's what I did. I made that transition. So I was running 10K, 15K. I actually ran a half marathon, and I started to get the flow, and my training did move more towards those longer runs. So it was almost like double my daily average once a week. So I sort of got into that, where if I was doing an hour and a half a day, an hour 15, I would run up to 2.5 hours on the weekend. And I was getting a certain strength and a certain balance together with, I was full-time. I was full-time running. So I was able to go to the gym and do my plyometrics and do my yoga. And I think that was a big factor, because already I was 30 years old. And so there hadn't been a lot of other runners made that transition to road racing at my age. So I pursued 81. And then into 82, we decided, my brother and I, John, decided that that in order to build a better strength, that when I come back to New Zealand, that I will focus on cross country. And so for 81 into 82, I ran pretty well up in Matheson Bay and all up in Parkery and all out to Wellsford, and just doing tremendous build-up conditioning, and it was all on trails and cross country. And then I went to the World Cross Country in 82 and got a bronze medal. So we knew.
Was it 82 or was it 83?
No, 82.
82, okay.
It was a World Cross Country.
A while ago now, yeah.
And then when I came back, a guy called Ian Gamble, who was, he did the Pastor Marathon, the Auckland Marathon. And he said, that Diamond Spaghetti wanted me to be their spokesperson, and they would give me a little extra and a better deal if I would run the marathon. And I thought, well, I don't think I'm that keen about running a marathon. But I spoke to, when I sat down with my brother John, and he said, well, look, hold on. Why don't you just go out and run a marathon? You're not going to race it. Just go out and run it. So I did. I prepared, and so I came back from the World Cross Country and ran the marathon. And I remember I saw Jack Foster at the past the meal, the 2 days before, and I said to Jack, I said, and he was pretty excited that I was going to be running, and I said, Jack, I'm going to run with you because you want to run. You want to be the first 50-year-old to break 2:20. I said, so 2:20 is a good time for me to run a marathon. It'll give me some idea of where I'm at. I'll run with you. And so we agreed that I would run with him. And of course, I remember I went out and I caught up with him at the start. And I said, Jack, why are all these people running around? And he said, oh, they're all warming up. And I said, I have no interest in running around. I'm going to be running 26 miles. I don't want to run 29 miles. I want to run 26 miles. He said, well, then run with me and we'll use the first mile as a warm-up. And so that was it. And I ran with Jack and we were going down through Newmarket. And he said, now, young fella, he said, you are running along here, chatting away to me. And he said, I think you should get up there with the leaders. And he said, now be off with you. And so off I went and I caught the leaders up going through Ponsonby down under the Auckland Harbour Bridge. And then we had to go out to St Heliers. And quite frankly, I was very, very comfortable. I felt well within my ability. But then again, it was still under 20 miles. So but once we got out there and started to come back, I had another surge. And I said to Kevin Ryan, actually, and I said, shall we make a move now to break this field open? And he said, you better do it yourself because I'm hanging on. And I just moved. I got the confidence that Kevin thought I was capable of it. He says, go on, go. And so, I had Jack Foster and then Kevin who believed in me. Go out there and do it. Go on. And of course, I went on and ran 2 hours 11 and 21, and I felt incredible. So there was the basis for believing that I've got a marathon in me somewhere, and I've just got to figure out where and how and what place. And so, so there again, sitting down with my brother, we talked about it, and he said, I don't think you should run another one this year. And I said, no, I've got 38 races between now and the end of the year. So I said, I've already made that commitment, so I won't be running a marathon. But he said, why don't you go to New York and watch the marathon and see and learn and get a feel for it? And I said, fine. Well, during that year, I had lots of offers from Boston and London and Berlin, all wanting me to run because they'd heard that I was Curly keen. But I had a few races in New York in '82, and I just sent something about New York City Marathon I liked. I liked the course. I thought it was going to be perfect for me. So I came back after '82 and again with my brother John, and he said, go back to running cross country this summer and don't try and run any races in New Zealand. There's a couple of races there that Ian Gamble put on, and I ran a couple of 10K races. But pretty well, I just...
road races?
Yes, road races around the Domain. And I think there was a series called the Countrywide Race Series. So I ran those, and then I went back into training. And then I went back to the United States and ran Beta Breakers in May. And then by June, I buttoned down and I said, right, I'm into training. I went back to Pennsylvania and did my training towards New York City Marathon. And that was pretty impressive, because I was able to not be easily distracted by all these races I was running, and I just trained, and I became quite not obsessed, but quite committed, probably more time than any time in my life, to committed to training, and the balance of and how I was doing my training, which was the long training, the forest training, the fartlek training, the skills, the agility, the balance, the coordination, the yoga, the cross training at the gym, all played a part. I used to love running my morning runs on the golf course in bare feet, and that was just very powerful. And I hadn't had time to do that in previous years, but now I had this time, so I could see and feel the strength and the balance coming in my running, and my whole personal life was very, very influenced by this incredible challenge I was on.
You completed your preparation, and then coming into the New York Marathon, lead in the last few weeks, was there an air of excitement or expectation, or what was that like?
I think we had I was going to have a 2 mile, a 3K, 3,000 meters, 2 mile time trial, and that was kind of towards the end of the track training and any pace training, interval training, that type of thing. So, and I remember I called my brother and I said, John, I want to run the mile. Can I switch that 2 mile for a mile? And he said, that's interesting. Why are you doing? I said, there's something, I just want to, everything's right, but I just sort of feel I want to go back to where I came from, to have that, the mile race. I wanted a mile, well, it wasn't going to be a race, the mile run. And so I got a couple of guys from the local running club. We went down to the high school track, and we found the mile mark, and those guys were there to just record. But I said, I don't want lap times. I said, I just want you to start the watch and stop the watch. So I started, and off I went, and I came through, and lap after lap, first lap, second lap, feeling good, third lap, feeling good. And in the last lap, I just got faster and faster, and I thought, wow, this feels amazing. It feels like back in 1972. It feels like I'm a 1,500 miler, and it felt very powerful, because I was very, very inspired by Lovelock and Snell and Hellberg and Bailey and Barry McGee and all those great runners of our time. And I think that was coming up the home straight. I just felt, this is it. I feel good about this. I feel great. I feel fantastic. That this is what is the icing on the cake for me. And I ran across the line, and they said, do you want your time? And I said, no, I'll just do a jog off and come round, and then I'll, and so Zaidi, my friend, said, what time do you think you did? I said, that was a 4-minute mile for sure. He said, it's 3:58.7. So that was it. I said, right, Pro, for the next, I think I had about 6 or 7, maybe 8 days, it might have been 9, 10 days before I was due to go to New York. And I just did my easy runs in the forest, some easy grass running, just rested well, ate well, did my training, but it was already done. Everything was in the bag. Everything was done. So I went to New York with confidence, knowing that the training had been done. And that was something I hadn't done before, leaving and going, knowing that I'm in the best shape of my life. I can't do anything more. And now it's up to race time to determine how all this comes out. So it was pretty powerful.
Yeah, you wouldn't get a much better preparation than that as a marathoner.
No, it was perfect.
Well, that's almost a Walker-like mile time trial.
Yeah. Well, John probably would have run 3:53, but no, that was, and I was 33 at the time. I hadn't broken 4 minutes for about 3 years. I'd been running some, but they were all intermingled with racing and track training and interval training I was doing in the forest and Bartlett and things like that. So, but this was the first time that I for a long time, that I'd actually gone and focused. So you see, the thing is, I'd had all these great races. 82, I set the world record for the half marathon. And as I said, world cross country, picked up another bronze medal there. Won the Auckland Marathon, won the Beta Breakers. So I was starting to realize that all this was all for a reason. All this training and all this preparation and all these races were part of this journey towards New York. And so knowing that New York was going to really define who I was, that was it. And I had a lot of confidence going into that event.
Yeah. So in the race itself, how'd you go during the race with the early pace, and what were your feelings as you moved through the race?
Well, what I did know is that we were going to have mile times. Every mile there's going to be a clock. There was no telemetry available to us in those days. I didn't have Garmin watches or anything like that, and I never wore a watch in racing or training anyway. So I wasn't going to start trying to figure out putting on my. So what I did is on my 4 fingers and thumb, I wrote on my little finger my 5-mile split, on the next finger my 10-mile split, on the next finger my 15-mile split, then my 23rd mile split. Oh, sorry, there was a 5, 10, 15, 18, 23. So, but I knew in my mind what I wanted to go through half marathon in. And so that was my guideline. So you need to run within this, because I'd watched other races where everybody just went out with the leaders and they all peeled off. And I said, no, I don't want to, I'm not going to be the last man standing. I'm going to run my race within this race. I'm going to run a plan. I'm going to have this time. I'm going to go in with a plan, and I'm going to stay with my plan. And so I did. And so I the first 5 miles I went through exactly at the right time, and then through 10 mile I was about 10 seconds off, but going through a bit of a bad patch. I didn't, and the rain started happening around 11 to 12 miles, and a little bit more rain. There wasn't much rain, and so there's a pathway of highs and lows. A lot of sometimes I was feeling good, and sometimes I wasn't, but I had to balance all that out. I had to be very careful with the potholes. A lot of potholes on the New York Road, and with the rain filling them, you couldn't see the potholes. So you had to be very careful. You had to keep an eye on where you're putting your feet. Be very, very careful about running on the white line, because the white line was almost like ice. And then, of course, the camber of the road is there to get rid of the water. So you've got to be sure not to run too much on your right or your left. So I mixed the surface up, left and right and middle, and right and left and middle. And so mixing up the road. And then I noticed too that everybody tend to be, running as a group through the turns. And so I would I started running the tangents at about 7, 8 miles. And it was amazing. They would have 20 yards on me and I'd run the tangent and I'd pick up 10 yards on them. And I thought that was pretty
I didn't
cool.
know you were that good at maths, did you?
Yeah, I know.
Geometry.
So it was an interesting journey. And, I went through 15 and went First Avenue, of course, is incredible. You come off the Brooklyn Bridge and then come down to millions of people down First Avenue. And of course, it was just incredible. And I was running fourth down there. But I started to pick up and I could feel my pace picking up just to get rid of these guys because they were starting to interfere with my flow. I would go right and they would come with me, and I'd go left and they would come with me. And I was getting agitated by that because they were in front of me or beside me or elbowing me. So I just thought, no, well, I'll get in the middle of the road and I'll just pick the pace up. And so I picked up the pace, and slowly but surely I came onto my own. I was on my own, and I felt a lot more comfortable with that now without that interference. And then we got really into Brooklyn, so we just started to notice that now. And then, of course, I got Shahanga, who was second. I caught him, passed him, and so now I was told that you are now second, but I couldn't see Jeff Smith. He was at that time. We're now into the Bronx now, and each block was short. So I'd come around a corner and I see nothing ahead of me because he'd already turned the next block, and so all those little blocks. So I had to try and just stay with my pace, knowing what I did. But the mile markers were still giving me a pretty accurate view of where I'm at. And so I'd lost about 23 seconds on my time down through before I got to Brooklyn Bridge. And then I picked up a little bit down through First Avenue. And then I lost a little bit as I went into the Bronx. But then I started to pick it up as I came back into Manhattan. So I wasn't surging, but I was just running to the terrain. And so that was where the variation was coming from. The effort was still the same, but it was just the terrain. And then about 23 miles, the ABC allocated a spotter on a bike who had a direct connection with the broadcast crew. And so I was getting accurate splits now, how far I was behind Jeff Smith. And so listening to my guy on the bike, and as he was doing the commentary back, and I said, "Did you say I was 15 seconds?" He said, "Yes." I go, "Okay, thank you." And he goes, "Interesting that you're talking to me." And I said, "Well, I've got to, you've got to be aware of what's going on. You can't be shut off." And then, and of course, by that stage, I was now in the twists and turns of Central Park. And once again, I focused more on the apex to apex, the tangents. And then he came to me and he said, "You picked up 5 seconds in that last mile." And I said, "Oh," I heard him. And I'm thinking, yes. And then we ran another half mile. And he said, "You picked up another 4 seconds in that half mile." And I said, "Well, I knew that I'm not running any faster." And then finally I got to see him. And he's in the middle of the road. Because in those days, the blue line was in the middle of the road. It didn't do that. So they always ran the course in the middle of the road. And he was running in the middle of the road. And I'm thinking, hold on. The reason I'm catching him is not because I'm running faster. I'm catching him because I'm not having to run the distance. I'm running the tangents, he's running the middle of the road. And I'm thinking, hold on, what if I've got, if I'm picking him up 4 seconds here, and we've got another 20 corners or maybe 30 corners, and I can pick him up 2 or 3 seconds times 30, there's a minute. And that's about what I'm behind him. So I don't have to run any faster. With a bit of luck, he might slow down. But what if he doesn't? What if he stays the same pace? I'm going to catch him. And then I thought, oh, hold on, I'm going to catch him at the finish line. That's no good because it doesn't work like that because it's not going to be that precise.
Well, he was one of those really tough poms, wasn't he?
Yeah.
They were all of a breed, those guys. Yeah.
And I'd come across Jeff quite a few times in my running history, so I knew what he was like. And he was a sub 4 minute miler too, by the way. He'd run the Emsley car mile. But what I did notice is we're coming up Central Park South, and I was starting to see more of him now, and because it was a long straightaway, and I could see that he was running in the crown of the road, and I ran on the lower side of the road, so I knew that I wasn't going quite the same climb as he was. And what I did know to do is go for my arms, shorten my stride, and like you're running uphill. It was a rise, but it wasn't a hill, but just be more efficient. Don't try and overstride, shorten it down. And I got up to Columbus Circle, went round through there, and then I could see him going downhill, and he was running quite cautiously down to get over the curb to go across a little bit of a grass section in Central Park before you got back on the course. And I noticed that he was very, very hesitant. And I thought to myself, that's where I'm going to catch up a lot of ground. Stay low, shorten the stride, run like it was cross country. And I got across there, got over back onto the main part of the Central Park. And then I could see that I was definitely now catching him. And I figured out, that I had 3 miles to go, and I would figure out, if I can get him every 5 to 8 seconds per mile, it's going to be my 20 or 30 seconds. And so, but I worked it out on the mile, you see, and it worked out exactly. I called him at 26, exactly. But I still had 385 yards to run. But also, too, I knew running that when I would run races and I would strategically put a gap on, I wouldn't try and keep that gap. I go, right, I've got that 50 yards. I'm going to make you catch me before I do any more work. And so I would make my competitors, and I thought, what if he's doing that to me? What if he's waiting for me to catch him? And then he's going to spurt again. So when I got up to him, I just ran as fast as I could away from him, so that in his peripheral, all he saw was a flash. And it rocked him. But you see, by the time that he figured out that I actually wasn't running away from him, 2 corners later, we were at the finish line. So it was just unbelievable.
Yeah. And that would have been quite a hullabaloo in the States at the time. New York Marathon. It doesn't get any bigger than that, does it, really?
No. No, if you're going to run one, you want to run one of the big ones.
So.
Yeah. And then I went back to the US around 2000 and worked with the City of Los Angeles Marathon. And that's when I really got stuck in and started putting my kids' marathon program in schools. We did Utah, Chicago, Las Vegas, and California. And then since then, really, so 2006 was our first full year with kids, and we had about 2,000 or 3,000 kids in the program, and now it's over 500,000 kids. So it's been quite a journey getting the kids going, and from that, a lot more programs have sprung up, and the daily mile is a big thing with our kids in our daily run. The tortoise has become a hero for the kids. The slow and steady wins the race. Finishing is winning. Winning is finishing. And then we're bringing in healthy eating, 5 fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. If we can get kids to think about 5-2-1-0, 5 fruits and vegetables, 1 hour, 5-2-1-0, sorry, 5 fruits and vegetables, 2 hours maximum screen time, 1 hour or 60 minutes of moderate, vigorous exercise, and 0 sugar sweetened beverages. So just get kids just to be thinking about getting out in that recess and playing games, not sitting on their device. So it's starting to work, and we're getting a big program. Biggest programs in Los Angeles, 42,000 kids go through the program every year, run by teachers and the principals and the PTA, the parents. They're the people that make this thing happen. Yeah. And so the community is very involved with all that. So it's fabulous. I'm enjoying it. Most of the programs are now locally owned by the schools and the school districts in the community. Sometimes the farmers market takes it on and delivers the program to the schools. And they start school gardens. And then I've been working with the high school mentor leadership program, which gets high school kids to go down to their local elementary school and do their community service. So it's slowly, it's coming. And we're more aware now than ever that we've got to get kids moving. We've got to get them healthy. What we're suffering with this COVID-19 is we're finding that it's, if you have your health and wellness, there's a good chance you're going to get through this. But if you don't have health and wellness, then you're going to struggle.
That sounds like a great place to finish up for now, Rod. I'm sure we could talk track and field and training and philosophy for hours. Oh, thanks, Rod.
Always a pleasure.